expected to sign. Dennis Schroder is going to be the first name that comes up for the Kings. What do you think? 301?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe they'll wait a little bit, but the thing that's crazy with the Schroder stuff is watching it, and regardless of independent reporting locally, including from you, Mark Stein and Jake Fisher in their Substack first reported like last week. It's crazy how fast this happened. The Kings were considered by some teams to be among the leaders to pursue Dennis Schroder. Just all the caveated language you can have. And then it was like 2 days later, the Kings are considered among the favorites to sign Dennis Schroder. And then like later that night, or maybe early the next day, we got the Kings are the favorites to sign Dennis Schroder, considered the favorite to sign Dennis Schroder. And then we got an update yesterday that was, it's like 2 and 30-ish million.
Yeah.
It was two. How did they phrase it exactly? 2 years and approaching but not exceeding 30 million, I think was the phrasing. But either way, it went in less than a week. It went from, the Kings have interest in Dennis Schroder to like, here's what the deal looks like. Oh, all right. So the Kings are going to sign Dennis Schroder. Got it.
It's weird how this one's played out, but like initially, Schroder's agent was trying to, from what I could tell, was trying to drum up business with the Detroit Pistons. He was trying to get
1,000% how it read.
Yeah, and not only that, but that's what I had heard from executives in the league. Like, oh no,
sure.
Yeah, most people believe this is Schroder's people trying to get more money, trying to lock in at that mid-level exception with the Detroit Pistons. But then the Pistons get in this weird situation where they're chasing a bunch of restricted free agents. Like they have their eyes set on a couple of guys, but they're telling Schroder like, hey, we'll come back to you, but you're going to have to wait. And his people are like, well, we're not waiting and then having all the money dry up because the Kings are, as a team, they're looking for a point guard right now. Their priority is to find a point guard.
Right.
So that means that if Dennis Schroder isn't available on day one of free agency, what about Tyus Jones? What about Trey Jones? What about Tyus and Trey Jones? What about a Malcolm Brogdon? Right?
Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, the Kings have to move. They don't have time to wait for something. And so the Schroder like noise got louder and louder, especially on Saturday. But again, like there is no like legal negotiating window right now. So the fact that like we kind of know that there's a potential for this is a bit crazy that it's this far out there. And again, like from the mid levels at 14.1 million this year. You can only give a free agent that is not your own free agent that you don't have bird rights to. You can only give him a 5% raise. So you can do the math pretty quick. That's like $700,000 for the second year. So you're looking at a 2-year, like $28.8 million deal if that's what they choose to do. And I would be very surprised if that's not what they choose to do. I mean, we talked about it. He is like, realistically, he might not be like, anything better than what we've talked about in the past, like the Darren Collison level of point guard. And I feel bad using Darren's name all the time like this, but that's what it is. It's like this specific level of point guard that can get you by for a season or two. He's not above that. And I don't think he's below that, but he is a very like accomplished NBA player, a very accomplished international player.
2023 FIBA World Cup MVP.
Yeah, there we go.
And gold medalist.
Yeah. I mean, the guy has talent, and to be honest with you, he can run this style of offense. He's not going to give you De'Aaron Fox 25 points per game, but all of the other stuff he's probably going to give you that De'Aaron brought.
I'm in two camps with the Dennis Schroder thing. One is it feels disappointing when the names we were throwing around were John Morant and Trae Young and Tyrese Maxey and Darius Garland. The Dennis Schroder thing in that regard feels disappointing.
Yeah.
But you just laid out why Dennis Schroder in a vacuum is fine. If you're looking what I think the Kings are trying to do. And I could be wrong here, and if I am, please let me know because I don't want to lead people astray. But it feels to me like they know, hey, this situation we're in, this contractual situation we're in is tough. There's not a big market for DeMar DeRozan.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a big market for Zach LaVine. There's not a big market for Domantas Sabonis. So this idea that like, hey, shed all your big contracts, get all these picks, tank, and start over, that option is not there. That path is closed. So instead, bringing in Dennis Schroder on a 2-year, $28.8 million deal,
mm-hmm.
that gives you a chance this year because look, if you're stuck this year with, I say stuck, if you are handcuffed this year to this roster, you go, okay, gap year was the term that D'Lo kept using on Friday.
Yeah.
Like it's a gap year, right? So he hates the phrase, but we're here. It's kind of like they've been forced into that. So what Dennis Schroder does is it gives you a chance to just be competitive this year.
Mm-hmm.
Can you be relevant? Maybe it's not a top 6 seed. Maybe it's not in that mix, but can you be in the play-in again? Can you just keep from being the Jazz, right? So I think that's what that does. And then worst case, you have a $14.4 million, 14.4 ish.
Mm-hmm.
You have $14-ish million expiring contract to work with next offseason.
Yeah.
Or maybe Dennis Schroder tears it up and you can trade him at the deadline. Like there is so much. I get why the Schroder thing feels disappointing.
Yep.
I 100% understand. I feel the same way. But on the other hand, he doesn't suck. This is not a bad player. This is not he's inconsistent as a 3-point shooter, but he's had seasons where he shoots it at 40%, or he's had stretches where he shoots it at 40%. I think he's 34% for his career. He can handle the basketball. He can distribute. He does a little bit of everything. He's a super pesky defender, just a pain in the ass defensively.
He plays with pace.
When you talk about setting culture and you talk about bringing in the right guys, this is a guy who's going to go out and play, I think, the style that they want to play.
Yeah.
And so, again, could you have done better in the trade market? Yeah, 1,000%. Could you have done better in the free agent market? Probably not.
Yeah, I don't think so. And, again, like people can bring up Trey Mann. I'm a big Trey Mann fan. He was supposed to be a restricted free agent, but Charlotte decided not to give him a qualifying offer yesterday, which was at almost $7 million. So he's available. And he's young. He's 24 years old, but he's also never run a team on his own. And on top of that, he's had massive injuries.
Mm-hmm.
Like he missed most of last season with a back injury, I believe. So yeah, like would I take a gamble on a guy like Trey Mann? I would, but I wouldn't take a gamble on Trey Mann over Dennis Schroder.
Right, exactly.
No. If you want to sign Dennis Schroder and then come back and bring in Trey Mann to compete for minutes, okay, that's fine, because the Kings still don't have a backup point guard. So, like, but there's a lot of work to do on this roster still.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just like, can you move DeMar DeRozan? Is Malik Monk going to be part of the team? Are you going to switch everything up and trade Domantas Sabonis? Like, can you move Zach LaVine?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that any of those things are going to happen at this point. Like, we've talked about it so often. Like, do you think 1, 2, or 3 of the big 3 will be back next season? It's sounding more and more like all 3 will be back.
I went from maybe I was 90-10. If you had set the over-under at 1 of those players being gone this offseason, I would have hammered the over.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I would have, I thought at least 1. I guess 1 doesn't really work. If you had set it at half, I'm sorry. If you had set it at half, I would have hammered the over. I'd been like, DeMar's gone for sure. They might be able to get something for LaVine. I was so convinced of that. I'm now like 75-25 the other way.
Yeah.
Where I think they're all 3 just going to be back. And so I think the moves you're going to see are in service of trying to build a competitive group around that trio.
Yeah.
Domantas Sabonis, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan. Whether you think they can do it or not, I don't personally.
Yep.
I think you're, again, calling it a gap year is probably a nicer thing than calling it a waste of a year.
Mm-hmm.
But I really do think I'm not laying this at Scott Perry's feet necessarily, or Doug Christie's for that matter, because this is just kind of the hand they've been dealt.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. I don't know that there's people falling over themselves to get Zach LaVine or DeMar DeRozan or Domantas Sabonis. So this is what you got. Yeah. And so instead of going to hell with it, that's going to be our 3 guys. Forget spending money. We're not going to spend anything. We'll get as cheap as possible at every spot and redo this again next year. No, you go get Dennis Schroder. I don't think signing Dennis Schroder takes Malcolm Brogdon or Russell Westbrook off the table.
Nope.
Both names tied to the Kings between Mark Stein and Jake Fisher. And then you've got the Trey Mann situation. His team option was declined by Charlotte. It's not, oh, Dennis Schroder is their answer. I think Dennis Schroder is a Band-Aid.
Oh, yeah. But I also think, to be honest with you, I think Zach LaVine is a Band-Aid, and I think DeMar DeRozan is a Band-Aid.
Are we going to call it a Band-Aid year?
Yeah, maybe it is a Band-Aid year. Okay. Because, like, honestly, at the end of this season, you know, you have to make a decision on whether you're going to pay DeMar DeRozan $10 million or you're going to pay him $26.
Yeah.
And
$10 million to not be on the team or $26 to be on the team.
Yeah. So if he makes it to that point, I'm going to guess that he's not going to be on the roster next season. And that's just because, like, look, it's not just Keon Ellis that has to get paid here, right? So there's this dynamic that people are missing, that Keegan Murray is also up for a contract extension this summer that will kick in not this season, but the following season. So this isn't always just about even today. A lot of times it's about what's going to happen next season and what your contract situation is going to be then, because the salary cap keeps going up 10%. Like, people should, like, the salary cap, the way that
that's set in stone.
Yeah. They're doing a smoothing, right? So they got all this new money coming in, a smoothing of the cap. Yeah, they have all this money coming in from the new television deal, but instead of, like, throwing it all on one season and having a bunch of silly contracts that don't make any sense because people have too much money, they're doing a smoothing of the salary cap where they're doing 10% a year.
Right.
Well, here's the problem with that. The problem is everyone's thinking, okay, well, 10 million is a lot when the salary cap's already, like, this year it's 155. That means the next year it goes up to 170. But if you sign your own free agents, they get 8% raises every year. So you're not really gaining that money, because a player like Domantas Sabonis, Zach LaVine, who signed a contract with his own team, like all of these players, the Keegan Murray contract, name that player that the Kings have, they're getting 8% raises. So that realistically means that the salary cap going up 2%, if you have mainly your own players, it's going up 2%. Because you've already dedicated that salary and 8% raises to your players. So it's complicated, but the Kings have to be aggressive and try to find homes for some of these guys that don't make up like what your long-term future is. And whether Scott Perry can do that or not, I don't know.
No idea.
But that's the challenge ahead. And so far, he has not been able to. So
yeah, and that's I think where a lot of the consternation comes from. Is this is a new GM, and I think there was an expectation of wholesale changes and everything's going to look different. They're going to flip the roster over and everything's going to be, and that might be the case, but it might have to be next year. So it's really tough to walk that line, though.
Yeah,
it's really tough if you're Scott Perry to sit down and go, we need to find a point guard for this team, and have that be taken as find a long-term answer at point guard. And then you just didn't have the assets to do it, or they didn't have the willing trade partners to do that because it wasn't going to happen via free agency. So it's a lot to ask. It's a lot to ask a fan base to go, hey, all these big moves, all this hope for change, not happening this year, but promise next year.
Yeah.
Just wait. Everybody wait. Like, nah, man, I want to wait.
Well, that, and I'll tell you, like, the worst part of all of this, right? The worst part of all of it is that you allowed a general manager on the way out the door to make a move. And the reason I bring this up again It's not to just throw salt in the wound of the De'Aaron Fox people out there that love De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox makes $37 million this year, right? And he plays the position of need that you have.
Yep.
Zach LaVine makes $47.5 million. You brought in a player who makes $10.5 million more than the player that you went out and does not play a position of need. So not only do you have to backfill the position that De'Aaron Fox left, but you also have $10 million less to do it. So I hate to tell people this, but if you want to know where Keon Ellis's money went, it's right there. Yep. It's in that transaction. You want to know why there's a good chance Jake LaRavia won't be back? It's right there.
Man.
And that's just the reality of the situation that Scott Perry inherited. Did not create. He inherited this situation where he has no option but to go get a point guard. And if he can't trade for a point guard, and he couldn't do that on draft night, he couldn't do it in the days building up to draft night when multiple point guards were traded. And now we get to this point where you're going into free agency and trades happen right here, but also a lot of teams are like, you know what, we're going to focus on free agency and then we'll deal with trades. Like it just puts the Kings in a bad situation. So
they're in a really hard spot.
Yeah. So that's why taking on this job was not simple, and it's why they better give Scott and, for that matter, Doug Christie a whole bunch of leeway here, because this is not a situation that either one of them created, but it's one that they've got to fight through because there is light at the end of the tunnel. It's just 1 or 2 years down the road when, again, DeRozan's money falls off, followed by Zach LaVine's money falling off, and that's when maybe they can make moves.
Right.
But by that point, I mean, you risk everyone being alienated by that point.
It is impossible to ask a fan base